Welcome to the Higher Ed Jobs Podcast. I'm Andy Hibble, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of Higher Ed Jobs.
And I'm Kelly Sherwin, the Director of Editorial Strategy. Today we're joined by Dr. José Antonio Bowen and Dr. Edward Watson, two national leaders helping campuses navigate rapid changes in teaching and learning where AI is involved. Dr. Bowen is a former university president, dean, and award-winning educator known for driving innovation in the classroom. And Dr. Watson is the vice president for digital innovation at AAC&U, the American Association of Colleges and Universities, and a leading voice on AI, digital equity, and the future of undergraduate learning.
And together, they've released the second edition of their book, Teaching with AI, A Practical Guide to a New Era of Human Learning, which expands on everything from ethics and privacy to custom bots, individualized feedback, and the realities of how students are already using AI.
Medical field, two different views. I mean, one of the things that Jose and I often say is, what we call cheating in higher education, business is calling progress. So how do we navigate a landscape where what we may see as cheating might actually be a skill that students need to possess post-graduation? So really, there's going to be difference from one class to the next. I don't think there's one size fits all in terms of policy. And I think it's up to the individual faculty member to make decisions about whether or not AI should be embraced broadly for a particular assignment or somewhere in the gray area in between, getting to the point where AI is absolutely not allowed in this class because it would be counter to achievement of the learning outcomes. So it's a complex space that really, I think the learning outcome and really the professor's own preference would drive what the choices might be in an individual class regarding the use of AI.
And there's a new study about the doctors that came out this week. So previously, right, the note-taking has been something that 66 or 67% of doctors are using. Now doctors are using it daily. So the note-taking's easy, right? Insurance codes. But 80-some% of doctors said it's making them a better doctor. Some of that's because they can listen better to patients. But a new use for doctors is getting alternative diagnoses, which is an interesting, right? Because think about that. So here's what I think it is. What else might I be missing? Right? This is exactly like how we would use it to make our writing better. So clearly for a medical student, you don't want to short circuit that, right? You want to think about all the possible diagnoses yourself. But if you're an expert, you're already a doctor, and you already think you know what the diagnosis is, having a partner who says, well, it could be this. And so this remarkable statistic that 84% of doctors, or something like that, think that AI is making them better doctors is, I think, really important for us to realize that the question is not, do we need to introduce AI? It's when and how, right? It might not, it's like the calculator. It might not be the first thing we have you do. We might have you learn to do math the hard way. Well, we should have, right? But at some point, we've got to introduce the calculator and the spreadsheet and other kinds of things. And so that's a pedagogical question. And all of us need to think about that. Where do we want the students to use AI and where do we not? And why? As Eddie says, what are the learning outcomes? And that'll be different if I'm writing a lab report versus learning how to write.
Wow, that's so interesting. The medical example, I'll come back to in just a sec, is really, really interesting on the human side of things. But also, with that last reflection, Jose, like it is the point where we feel like academia kind of has finally adopted AI wholeheartedly is when we acknowledge that the most unbiased peer reviewer is going to be AI if we're going in that direction. Or maybe certain peer review organizations are going to want some bias within their AI. So I want a peer reviewer who has a chip on their shoulder, and now AI is going to be able to do that exactly the way somebody with a chip on their shoulder does. So that really kind of piqued my interest, particularly within the kind of the internal structure of academia. But on the human side, with the doctors and the nurses and the kind of the disparate use there, it really kind of edges on this, but doesn't quite hit it perfectly. And I think this is one of the concerns that you see repeatedly throughout society about AI. The book does a good job of expanding on AI-supported tutoring, feedback, and customized learning. And that's exactly with the doctors and nurses what we're talking about. But what are the most promising ways that AI can individualize learning without weakening the ability to develop crucial human relationships that we could possibly, like you said in these other instances, start skipping if we have AI, but human to human contact is just so important. And it's a bad example, but just watching it last night with my wife, was watching the Apple show Pluribus, which it's not completely finished yet at the time we're recording it. And the idea of human contact in that show is definitely a question. I'm not going to do no spoiler alerts here. I'm not going to spoil Pluribus for the entire academic world. But like that part of AI, I think, and maybe I'm speaking a little bit for myself, when you really sit with it, sometimes feels like the most scary. What do you think the most promising ways are that AI is going to allow us to grow the way it should, but not weaken our ability to interact with others?
Well, there are a couple of questions in there. So, uh, the first is I don't think we know the answer to your last question, right? Let me start by saying I believe that human relationships are what drive a great education. And I think there's some evidence for that. But I also know that my belief that AI can't replace those relationships is a belief at this point, right? That the customized AI tutor for some people might be able to, I don't know. I want the relationship part to be true, and I believe in the evidence that we have so far. But we're entering a new age, and just in the same way that we used to not believe that you could work from home, that you had to be in the office. And so old people like me, right, want people to be in the office. So they're in, right. But young people like, no, I get more work. And the evidence says, that you get more work done at home. Uh, there are other negative things that happen. But so I think it's different for different people. I think we don't yet know. Uh, so we need to pay attention to where are the places where relationships really matter, right? We often think, oh, advising, I need to be in the room with the student. Well, you do, but a lot of advising is not advising, it's administration. It's did you take the prerequisite? Did you, this schedule is at 2, you have to 3. AI could do that piece. The relationship piece is how are you feeling? How do you feel about your education here? And what we do is we have an administrative conversation about prerequisites and when you're going to study abroad and think, oh, well, I had a relationship, right? And so where is the place for students? How does it matter? So I do think we need to keep an open mind about where this could be. But to your other question, maybe I'll let Eddie start with the where we use the customization and the other things that AI can do.
Well, I guess I'm sort of following up on some of your initial thoughts, Jose. I mean, I have some dystopian views of what the future might look like, and if we could predict the future, I think we would be probably not on this podcast. We'd be doing other kinds of things right now. But one possible utopian future for higher education and AI, I think that this is likely possible, and we will see this capitalized upon in some very specific pockets. But there's currently great resistance from faculty with the notion of AI serving as a grader within a course, like the recent AAC&U faculty survey really highlights that the vast majority of faculty feel like that's an act of academic cheating. But as we think about the variety of ways that AI could be leveraged for a number of the administrative components of the process of teaching, like there's the time that you spend in the classroom, but there's also class prep, assignment design, grading, a number of different things. I guess I'm hopeful that maybe a new signature pedagogy could emerge for higher education across all disciplines. That as we might capitalize upon improving generative AI tools that can help us with some of the administrative tasks. So instead of maybe teaching a 4 and 4 load equaling 40 hours a week, roughly give or take, maybe that's a rosy notion. But if you leveraged AI in a way that instead of spending 40 hours a week prepping and grading and everything that we do for teaching, maybe it would be more like 35 hours. Maybe it's 32 hours if the tools improved and we trusted them. Well, then what might we do with that extra time? Might we reinvest in our students in those personal relationships where, if we know that we've got an extra 8 hours every week, how might we make ourselves more available to our students? Of course, students have to meet us there, right? But, to say, hey, I'm going to be in the dining hall from 12 to 2 every Tuesday and Thursday. And I'd love to talk about my career journey or what the job possibilities are or the thing that we're going to be talking about in class tomorrow. But come and talk with me about anything. We can talk about surfing. We can talk about running. We can talk about, your career, your aspirations, developing relationships, all of those kinds of things that it's really kind of hard to do these days, when you've got that many students coming in through a 4-and-4 section, teaching section within our teaching load. So it's possible that actually AI itself isn't the element that actually increases personalization, but rather it frees up time where actually the human spends more time with the human students to engage in personalization and making connections and the like.
And here's another example of how AI could help us. So most of us give generic assignments, even though we know that math students don't really care about train A leaving the station going 20 miles an hour faster than right. We know that unless you want to be a train scheduler, nobody really cares, right? So we know that it's much more effective and students will actually try harder and put more effort if the question is, well, the wide receiver you're covering runs 10 miles faster than you do, or the Republicans are registering 30 voters an hour and the Democrats are registering 20 voters an hour. How much earlier did it, right? That's exactly the same math problem. And so most of us can say, okay, I'm going to do 3 versions and you take your pick, but it's the same math. But AI now allows us to customize every single problem set for every single student, right? So I could actually give you problems that relate. You want to be an anthropology major, you're a poli-sci major, you're a business major, or you're interested in football. So we could give every student a problem set that's more motivating. And that, right, that doesn't, not now it's not going to take us any time. That used to be a real, it was too time consuming. We couldn't do it. So finding the places where AI could help, as Eddie suggests, is I think the first step. But to come back to your question, Andy, ultimately you're asking a social question, right? Do we accept that people could work from home now or be on a Zoom call instead of having to have a real meeting? And that's a social, we changed what we assumed was okay. So at the moment, we don't want our doctor to go in the hallway and look up AI and say, oh, here's what you have and come back in. On the other hand, we're fine with our doctor stepping into the hallway and not doing long division, which was the case when I was a kid, right? The doctor had to do long division on a piece of paper to know how many milligrams to give you. And now the doctor uses an app, and we accept that as being better and more accurate. So I don't want the doctor, I want the doctor's opinion, but I also might want a second opinion from AI, or I might want the doctor to look at the other possibilities from AI. So some of that is using the expertise the doctor has, but some of that is also social. It's a little bit like self-driving cars, right? We're nervous about self-driving cars, even though they're already significantly safer than human driving cars, right? So the problem with self-driving cars is really our human anxiety. And so at some point, could we get to the place where we ban humans from driving altogether? We would save hundreds of lives a day, a day. But it feels weird. And so there's a technology question, but there's also just a question of what we feel comfortable with. And I think we're in that place for all of us, not just faculty, where there's anxiety, there's grief, there's identity. And so it's very hard to know if in 5 years, everybody will accept AI plus human as the writing standard and just assume that every piece of writing you see has an AI component. I don't know.
When do you think the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times will start using spell check? There's places where when you talk about the doctors or you talk about you talk about all these examples of little by little, we've had things creep into our society where those things are there. My gosh, I remember a point in my academic training, you can't use a calculator in a math class. Now there's so many different places where you can use calculator. But boy, I can tell you there were points where I was not allowed to use one. I know we could go on forever, but I want to make sure. I guess I've already plugged Pluribus. I want to definitely wrap up here by saying I'd love to leave our listeners with some concrete next steps. Please read the book. It's fantastic. Um, but in addition to reading the book, assuming everybody who's listening is going to, are there other resources or tools that the two of you would recommend for faculty who want to continue learning and experimenting in this space?
So we do have a website, We Teach with AI, and it has all the prompts from the book, but it also has an up-to-date list of models. So there are many more models because they're coming out all the time. There are 30 different linguistic, regional, and cultural models, for example, listed there. There's also a list of resources, which includes things like university policies, faculty development. There's prompting advice, there's assignment ideas. And so send us assignment ideas and we add them to the website. It is a collective project, but that's a place where people can go and click on some links and try some different models and get ideas for new assignments.
Yeah, and I would share that, AAC and you, we are leaning into a wide array of programming to support the entire institution. I mean, Jose and I do a Teaching with AI workshop series every semester. The forthcoming ones in the month of February. We'll be doing something similar, certainly updated for the fall semester of 2026 and beyond. We have an institute on AI pedagogy and the curriculum where campuses send teams to engage in the curricular revision work and the pedagogical change and policy development and governments and all the governance, all those kinds of things. We have a symposium on AI leadership for those that are trying to lead change on their campus. I mean, we've developed programming for sort of every strata of higher education to help them thoughtfully engage in thinking about their next steps as a result of the emergence of generative AI and agentic AI and whatever comes after that.
Well, thank you for all those fantastic resources. And obviously, if the listener hasn't gotten the point, please read this book. It's fantastic. Jose, Eddie, it's been such a fun conversation. It's been great to have you on today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. If you have any questions for Jose or Eddie, please feel free to email us at podcast@higheredjobs.com or send us a direct message on X at higheredcareers. Any thoughts, anything, please, we want to hear from you. Thank you, and we look forward to talking with you all again real soon.